Hi guys, we're Group A3, and our presentation is on animal behavior that aids in survivorship. My name is Rhett.
I'm Isabel.
I'm Ellie.
And I'm Jaylee.
Okay, so we chose the topic for our presentation, animal behaviors that aid in survivorship. So we're going to be covering 8 different topics regarding animal behaviors that explain how they're beneficial for survival. So first, Jaylee is going to cover camouflage and mimicry. And then Ellie is going to cover defensive behaviors as well as social behaviors and group living. And then Rhett will be doing foraging and hunting strategies, followed by Jaylee, who will be doing migration and navigation. Then Rhett will do communication and signaling, and I will finish with torpor, hibernation, and estivation, as well as adaptations to avoid predation.
All right. So our first topic is camouflage and mimicry. So we just have a couple examples. So the first is aggressive mimicry. It's often called the wolf in sheep's clothing tactic. It is a show that the predator puts on to lure the prey in on the promise of food or mating. This behavior can be seen in the common eastern firefly. The male will demonstrate courtship rituals, and the female will give an accepting response, indicating that she is willing to mate. After the male has been lured in, she will go in for the kill, and make a meal out of him. The next is Batesian mimicry. It is where a harmless species, like the visceroid butterfly, develops the characteristics of a harmful species, such as the monarch butterfly. Um, the Viceroy has adapted to have the orange and black wing patterns of the toxic monarch butterfly, and that effectively tricks predators into leaving them alone. And then next, a couple different types of camouflage. So one type is concealing coloration. It's a type of camouflage that aids in masking the location of the prey by causing them to blend in with their environment. An example would be the snowy owl inhabiting the Arctic region. And the next would be disruptive coloration. It's another type of camouflage where the animal possesses a pattern on their fur, making it hard to distinguish them from their surroundings. So, an example would be the spots on a white-tailed deer fawn. It looks a lot like light filtering through the trees in the forest.
So next we will be looking at how animals use defensive behaviors to aid in survivorship, and camouflage and mimicry, as discussed in the last slide, are actually examples of these behaviors. And some others that animals use are physical defenses, like the sharp quills on porcupines or tough shells in turtles. Chemical defense behaviors are another mechanism that are seen in animals like the European fire salamander, which produces toxins that can sicken or potentially kill an animal that touches or consumes it. Animals with strong chemical defenses often display bright aposematic coloration, such as the vibrant colors of poisonous dart frogs, which serves as a warning to predators. A lion defending its prey would be an example of aggressive behavior. And then the last defensive behavior I'll touch on is deceptive behavior, where some animals, like opossums, play dead to trick predators into thinking they're not worth attacking. And then overall, these defense mechanisms are essential for survival in the wild and highlight how animals have adapted to protect themselves. And then next, I'll discuss how social behaviors and group living can improve the chances of survival. So, living in groups offers many advantages, such as protection from predators. For example, animals in groups rely on each other to watch for danger, especially when resting or searching for food. And there is safety in numbers, making it easier for individuals to detect threats and just overall protect each other. And additionally, being part of a group can help animals find food more easily, as some species work together to hunt or gather resources. And this cooperation not only increases food availability, but also can strengthen the social bonds within the animal group. And then social behaviors are also important for animal survivorship. Certain species, like ants and bees, have specialized roles within their groups, ensuring that tasks such as finding food or protecting the nest are handled efficiently. And these roles, known as division of labor, allow each member to focus on what they do best, which benefits the entire group. So, living in social group can encourage behaviors like learning from others and sharing knowledge, which enhances the group's ability to adapt to changes in the environment.
So animals have different foraging and hunting strategies that help aid in their survivorship. One foraging strategy that is commonly used by animals is solitary foraging. Solitary foraging is where an animal uses its own skills and senses to search for and consume food on its own. Solitary foraging allows animals to have reduced competition for food and it lets animals focus on their own needs, which optimizes foraging behavior. An example of a specific animal that uses solitary foraging is a fox. Foxes use their senses of hearing and quickness to hunt small mammals, birds, and insects. The other foraging strategy that animals use is group foraging. Group foraging occurs when animals search for and eat food resources in groups. Animal foraging in groups can use teamwork, share information, and reduce predation risks. A specific example of group foraging is wolves. Wolves use teamwork to hunt down prey and cooperation to capture them. Along with foraging strategies, animals also use hunting strategies to hunt prey and obtain their food. These hunting strategies include filter feeding, which is an animal that extracts small food particles from water and filters out what it doesn't want. Grazing, which is where an animal consumes large quantities of grass and berries. These are typically herbivores. And scavengers, which are animals that eat carcasses left by other animals. And ambush predators are carnivorous animals that lie in wait, and when prey comes, they strike quickly. And then stalking predators, which are carnivorous animals that use stealth and slow movements to approach their prey before attacking. And if we look at this picture right here, you see these bears are using a hunting strategy, which is grazing, and they're trying to find grass and berries to eat, typically after hibernation.
Okay, next I'll be going over migration and navigation. The first thing I'll be covering is the circannual rhythm, which is the pattern of biological processes that a species follows over the period of a year. It is responsible for many of behaviors that animals go through, which like reproduction, hibernation, and migration. This rhythm maximizes the chance at survival for animals by indicating the right time to migrate. The main driving factors behind migration are the changes in light based on the season, food availability, and temperature, and these all play a large role in the circannual rhythm of long-distance migratory animals. Next is circadian rhythm, which is the biological clock that animals follow that govern their day-to-day activities and plays a role in the efficiency of their migration. So in long-distance migratory animals, it affects the pattern of their travel. This is because these animals will often coordinate their travel to favorable conditions, such as wind speed and direction, or predator activity levels. And then migration can be broken down into three different phases, which include the long distance, homing, and pinpointing phase. The long distance phase is where the animal is navigating unfamiliar territory and often relies on the magnetoreception, which is an animal's ability to sense the Earth's magnetic field and then orient themselves accordingly. The second phase, or the homing phase, can be described as the navigation of familiar land. And then lastly, the pinpointing phase is characterized by the recall of landmarks and odors to a specific location to get those animals where they're going.
So animals use communication and signaling to transmit information to one another. This behavior helps animals warn danger, establish territories, coordinate actions, and attract mates. Animals can communicate in many different ways, including visual signals, chemical signals, auditory signals, and tactile signals. Visual signals are when an animal uses body language, colors, patterns, or movements to convey information. An example of an animal using visual signals would be a cobra flaring their hood to warn predators. Chemical signals are where an animal can release chemicals to influence the behaviors of others. Cats use chemical signals to mark their territory and signal ownership. Auditory signals help animals communicate over short or long distances by using sounds. Birds use auditory signals to attract mates and defend territory. Tactile signals are where animals communicate with each other through touch. They do this to strengthen bonds and coordinate actions. An example of tactile touch would be grooming. Animals groom each other to build trust and strengthen social bonds. And then right here in this photo, you can see a type of visual signal. So these wolves are kind of staring at the cameraman, protecting their babies, saying like, hey, if you get closer, we're probably going to attack you.
And then next, I'll be talking about torpor, hibernation, and estivation. So animals do have certain adaptations that help them to conserve their energy, and torpor is an umbrella term, which is a physiological state that involves decreased activity and metabolism. Essentially, it just allows the animals to save their energy by down-regulating when they are faced with less than ideal conditions, and those conditions are usually difficult or dangerous. And some animals exhibit daily torpor, but other animals will exhibit a long-term torpor. One example of that is during the winter, some animals will exhibit hibernation to adapt to the cold environment and the food scarcity. One example is the hazel dormouse, which is that picture on the slide, and the scientific name for that is Muscardinus avallenarius. But during hibernations, the animals will lower their body temperature to a super cooled state, which is almost frozen. But every 2 weeks or so, they will periodically undergo an arousal, which will raise their body temperature and then allow them to become briefly active before resuming their hibernation for the rest of the winter. And then other animals will exhibit estivation during the summer, which allows them to adapt to hot environments and water scarcity. And estivation allows animals to downregulate during the day when it's hot and then become more active at night when it has cooled off. And then finally, we're going to talk about adaptations to avoid predation. And almost all adaptations can actually help animals avoid predation. And we kind of already talked about a couple of them, which include camouflage and defensive behaviors. But I will talk about two other ones more specifically, which are warning signals and then highly developed senses. But their warning signals, for example, skunks spray their predators, but that's only after three other warning signals. Skunks actually thump the ground with their feet, snap their teeth, and then raise their body hairs to warn their predators before they spray. And then another example of an animal that gives off a warning signal is a beaver. Beavers actually slap their tail against the water, which creates a really loud sound. And that sound will alert other beavers nearby who will join in slapping the water with their tails. And then they'll dive underneath the water to safety. But another specific adaptation to avoid predation is heightened senses, such as sight, hearing, and smell. Prey animals such as deer have eyes on the side of their head, which allows them to have a bigger field of view to see predators coming. But in addition to that, they can also hear their predators first before even seeing them coming. And when they hear them, they can determine the direction that those sounds are coming from and then flee from the predators. And they can also usually smell their predators before they even see them.
So in conclusion, Jaylee covered camouflage and mimicry, followed by Ellie covered defensive behaviors, followed by Ellie again covered social behaviors and group living. I covered foraging and hunting strategies. Jaylee covered migration, navigation. I covered communication and signaling. Isabella covered torpor, hibernation, estivation. And again, Isabella covered adaptations to avoid predation. And here are our references. And thank you for watching our presentation on animal behaviors that aid in survivorship.